Hello besties, my name is Dylan the Bridge and welcome to my channel. This week's art is of Scott Summers from the Fox X-Men movies, and it's sort of related to what I'm talking about this week, because I'm talking about Gambit, which I did not like how he was portrayed in those movies. But I did really love Channing Tatum as Gambit. So the comic this week is What If Galactus Transformed Gambit. This comic was of course published by Marvel on January 8th of 2025. Now excuse me if I pronounce this wrong. I'm gonna try my best though. It was written by Josh Trujillo, inked by Manuel Garcia, and colored by CC De La Cruz. The comic features of course Gambit, the Watcher, Galactus, and the Collector. Now the Watcher only shows up for like 2 panels, but you know, he's there. Honorable mention. So Gambit, aka Remy, is one of my favorite characters. But if I were to put my favorite characters in a list, comic-wise, Daredevil, Gambit, and Corinthian. But outside of comics, at their place would be a tie, honestly, between Corinthian and Dr. Habit from a video game called Smile for Me, which I definitely recommend. I achievement hunted that game, very fun. I have the art book. Oh my god, it's a great time. I got all the merch for it. Anyways, I started to really like Gambit in June of 2024. I started playing Fortnite and I missed the window when Daredevil was in the shop, but I had seen a couple episodes of X-Men 97 at that point. I'm back in April. And I saw Gambit was in there, and you know, I fucked with him. So I got him, and it all went downhill from there. I finished up watching X-Men 97, and I started getting X-Men comics. There's a bunch in the 50-cent bin. Not gonna lie, there's so many. And then during the Gambit hype, I managed to actually get 2 of his volume books from the 90s. So that was pretty slay. And now, of course, with full spoilers ahead, because I'm just going to be yapping about this comic and I don't know what's important and not important. So let's talk about it. The comic starts off before Gambit became an X-Men. And he was used to track down the Morlocks so the baddies could, you know, kill him. And of course, you know, Gambit wasn't very excited that he did that. He was left feeling a lot of guilt and grief. And then we get the Watcher in his little panels, and he was like, oh, what if I mess up his usual story? What if I was a little guy? And made him hella fucking powerful after his lobotomy at Claire's. So Rami gets summoned by Galactus, who wants the Cajun to serve him. And Galactus gives Remy with extra power, the Power Cosmic, which all the Heralds get. And with these new powers comes a really great look, as the classic saying goes. His trench coat, hair, and bow staff are now glowing pink with cosmic kinetic energy, and at the end of his bow staff has a little spade on it, and it's so cute. And with Gambit, of course, you know, being Gambit, he has to make his little quips, his little gambling puns, and he is like, deal me in. And now he's the Herald of Galactus. Galactus tells him that they have a lot of work to do and they gotta leave Earth, like, right away. But Gambit has some unfinished business. So, you know, he has all this power now and he needs to take care of it. So he throws some like extra charged cards at the ship and flies out into space because yes, he can fly now. But Galactus is not having it. So he sends out the Punishers, which are his little army, like robot thing men, to bring that Cajun back. But Gambit is not gonna go down without a fight. So he throws a bunch of cards at them, causing the Punishers to blast off into space. But they were kind of quick to come back, because they didn't actually go that far. But only one of them is brave enough to actually go up to Gambit, who charges him up with kinetic energy and just blows him up right there. After that, Gambit goes, who else wants to try their next hand? He's just a silly little guy, what can I say? But Galactus got tired of all that and summoned Gambit back. And Gambit told him that he's been pushed around before and he's not going to let that happen because he doesn't want another Morlock situation. Which let me know if I should talk about in a video, which I'm already planning on it, but let me know if y'all want that. But Galactus also mentions that he doesn't even know why he's been selected, and Gambit doesn't understand why he would want a swamp rat like him. But Galactus wants him for his skills in thievery. He wants him to steal a planet. Dun dun dun! All Gambit has to do is go to this private gallery that is only open once in a great age. Inside of that, there's a museum with all sorts of different objects, weapons, and even other creatures. The museum, which is also a space station, because, you know, it's space, is owned by Tanlier Teven, aka the Collector. I didn't look up how to pronounce, like, most of these different names, so excuse me. Please don't. Yeah, I'm trying. So Gambit arrives at the event, and he looks around in the main room, you know, scoping out the place. And by the ceiling, there's a bunch of different spheres. All of them are yellow, but one blue one. And the Collector's most valuable possession is a planet, the very one that Galactus wants. So, you know, there's our plot. And if the Collector found out that Galactus was here, he would absolutely just straight up destroy the planet without a second thought. And the Collector goes up and greets Remy, mentioning that he already knew that he was the Galactus's new herald. Yet the Collector told him that they can handle all of this later, and he heads off back to the party. And Gambit decides to give himself a special little private tour, but before he could, he found a pretty lady. So, you know, Gambit being Gambit goes up to her and uses his charm. And she gives him a tour instead. They ended up in the Collector's gallery, and of course Gambit kisses her, you know, and she can feel all of this new, like, cosmic kinetic energy flowing through both him and now her, and she feels more energized because of it. But also inside of the gallery, there's a bunch of giant test tubes or whatever that's filled with, like, the creatures that were mentioned earlier. And they are not happy, you know, because they're fucking trapped. Gambit, you know, kind of talking shit about the Collector. Not really, but, you know. But she mentions that the Collector's duty is to, quote-unquote, catalog, to protect, to keep what will inevitably become ruined, end quote. I sound so professional. Look at me. And before she has to get back to work, Gambit gives her one last kiss for the road. He continues on his own little private tour, but gets stopped by like 2 guards, and I think they're like robots. I don't know, it's hard to tell. They're all like alien creatures and shit, but they look like robots. And the guards keep on telling him to leave, and he was like, "You're talking to me? What's wrong?" But by the third time that he gets asked to leave, he like walks past them, but sends out kinetic energy through the floor, and that goes into the guards. They get knocked out. And then he does some sick flips and goes up into the spot where the computer is that like holds all the information about every single thing in the gallery. But there's a problem. He obviously can't access it because, you know, why would he be able to? So he's about to blow it up when the collector shows up and it's like, hey, if you blow that up, you're never gonna find where the planet is. But Gambit's all like, I already know where it is, and points at the blue spear that was mentioned in the beginning. And then the collector tells him about the planet. The planet is called Ta, and a long time ago, Galactus lived there as a mortal. He escaped before it all died out, like the universe and shit. And during the Big Bang, he became a god. You know, like you do. Very casual. So the collector wanted to do the impossible, and because he was curious about what the planet was like, you know, that birthed a god. You know, wouldn't we all? So he got a worldsmith to recreate the planet, like down to the details and stuff. Like, you know, the best he could. Gambit calls him petty for keeping the planet away from Galactus, but the collector refuses to give it back because of how much Galactus wants it, and he's very happy that he has something that Galactus desperately wants. And the collector heads back to the party, you know, thinking this situation's over. But Gambit isn't done. No. My boy is just getting started. He sends out kinetic energy throughout the floor again, and it goes all over the space station. Slowing down some locks, speeding some up, you know, destroying all the defenses, letting out all of the creatures that were being held captive. And this, of course, pisses the collector off. Because, you know, what the hell? How dare he do that? So, I don't know much about the collector's powers. I tried researching it, but this one that happens in this comic isn't even listed. At least, like, on his fandom. Because I use a lot of fandom. In my Google document to, like, link, especially to my Marvel comics, because it's the easiest one to find and shit. That's, like, consistent. And I don't know. Info dumped to me about the collector's powers. I love learning. But the collector's fists start glowing, and he flies up into the air, and he's getting ready to punch Gambit and, like, you know, fight him. But Gambit freezes him. And he's being a little cocky, so he goes up to him, shakes his hand, his frozen hand, and mentions that he's been swiping his energy, his kinetic energy, since Remy, like, walked into the party. I also have an important note. After he tells the collector to stay like a dog, he also calls Galactus Papa Galactus. And, you know, he was hankering for that planet. It was very important that you knew about that. Yeah, Galactus, he arrives at the now destroyed space station, towering over it. He asks if Gambit had finished his task, and Gambit says yeah, he did. And even has the collector all wrapped up for him, but there's some bad news to this. It can't be that simple. Yes, Ta was recreated, like, down to the details and shit, but it's not, like, actually, like, how it was in the past. There's no life, it's like pretty much an empty shell of it. And that pisses Galactus off. So he sends the Collector down to forever live on the empty planet as a punishment. And even though the results weren't what like Galactus actually really wanted, at least he found out that the planet, you know, wasn't actually his home. Still that feeling of loss, you know. He thought he was gonna get a little piece of home, but him and Gambit are both now just left with the feeling of loss. You know, from him no longer having like any traits of his own planet, to Gambit like helping all that murder happen. It's a hard time. But with that, Galactus sends Gambit home. No, he no longer has to serve him. That was all he needed. And that left Gambit wondering how his life was gonna change after all that. Will he move on to still becoming an X-Men? Who knows? And that's a comic. There was a handful of the Galactus Transformed certain characters that were published like in January, but I only got the Gambit one. I did think about the Rogue one, but I just love Gambit the most. I love the two of them, don't get me wrong, but I got a special place in my heart for Gambit. I wish they would play around with like this more powerful Gambit more, so I think it would be really cool to see, you know? Like imagine if we had like not even like this powerful of a Gambit, but just a powerful Gambit in the X-Men. I want to see more of him in comics. Please. So, I took longer to work on this video than I would have liked. I got distracted, I just put it off. Made lots of silly little jokes while I was making my silly little notes. Lots of doodles, and then, you know, finishing up the script the day I recorded the voiceover. But it's fine, it's fine. And I also had to get a new editing program because I have like 5 to 6 hours of drawing footage, and it kept on lagging and crashing my old editing software. But yeah. Worst case scenario, I was just gonna use the time lapse, but one of my friends recommended a different editing program, so one that was also free, so slay. Anyways, I hope y'all liked the video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, please. And of course, my socials will be linked below. You can see my art on both Instagram and Blue Sky. I'm doing my best to remember the post there. Bye besties, I hope you have a great day, or night, or whatever, you know. Bye bye!